like to have something to say. Where shall we start? Karen, do you want to facilitate this meeting for us?
I was just looking for one piece of paper, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna have a million pieces of paper over here.
I have it in front of me now. Okay. As you can see in the Novus agenda, the materials that we provided, we have provided a memo that really, what I tried to do here is to give an overview of every thing that the council has discussed so far, and there were some questions about focus areas after releasing this, and we'll talk about those as well. But the primary intent of today's meeting is really to go through the implementation strategies, the timeline specifically. So the last work session that council had, you identified importance. And council members said, let's go back and double check that those importance ratings against what the residents voted on and supported. I did a summary of all the strategies that have been either deleted or combined, and I tried to organize that. Also tried to give an overview of the strategies that have been added to the plan since the initial draft was presented to the public, and give a description of what those were and why council chose to add those strategies as well. So I tried to articulate as much of that, both in the memo and as well as the Novus agenda memo that's listed here. And then, so today's key objectives are, one, to just go through those timelines, do a double check. I will say that Jeff and Darren and I last week did not have time to get together on those, so it was my first pass at it. Even going back through them again, I would recommend changing some of them that I said maybe that might be what you want to consider. So council, of course, is in a position to actually assign the timelines. It was just a first pass. P&Z met last week and had a great conversation with them about the strategies, generally very supportive. There were a couple things that P&Z wanted council to consider, so Leo's here to share that with you today, and I embedded those more significant ones in the memo. There were some suggestions, like maybe consider rewording this or being consistent with the wording here. Those other kind of non-substantive comments that that weren't significant, I did not list out in the memo, and we'll just incorporate those. So we've got Leo here, there. And then finally, in my staff memo, Darren and I had conference calls with consultants, and we've talked about where they stand in the process, and they've looked at their calendars, and we've got some tentative timelines proposed for presentation of the next version. So you've got some timelines in here to talk about as well. Okay? Is that good?
Very good.
All right. We will, actually, I already had that pulled up, I think. We'll start with the memo and kind of go through that. And then as the P&Z comments that are appropriate to those various sections, we'll kind of pull those in at the time. So in the focus areas, this is just again highlighting overall what we did, or what council decided. We had the 5 focus areas, and there was a question over the weekend about focus area 1 and the language about the 3 single-family residential neighborhoods that could accommodate up to 2 dwellings. So went back and looked, and it was in the original plan that was presented to the public. It's also online under the draft comp plan, so all of the resident votes that were related to the ETJ included that description that had those neighborhoods in there. But I think maybe some council members didn't understand that. So before we went any further, I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to talk about that if you wanted to.
Well, I think it was my comment primarily that prompted this discussion. And my comment was that, yes, it did appear in the documentation as was seen at the Fair Barn and so forth. However, in the very active discussion about the focus areas, which we held, I think, on June 26th, somewhere in that range, about each focus area, and we extensively discussed what should be in the focus area descriptions. We did not contemplate this particular exception, which says, with the exception of 3 new single-family residential neighborhoods that could accommodate up to 2 dwelling units per acre. This was not even part of the discussion. And in fact, if you look at the results of the meeting as you described in your further memo later, and in fact, the official meeting minutes, which were approved, it is not described as even being discussed, and in fact does not appear to be documented in any way. So that's why I was somewhat alarmed that this particular exception appeared apparently out of nowhere in my mind. So, and I don't think it's appropriate, quite honestly, to talk about an exception, and then specifically an exception of 3, and picking out 3 new single-family residential neighborhoods versus 2 versus 1 versus 4, who knows? And because in the future, obviously, with the right application, the village can, in fact, through the conditional zoning or the process, create these. So it's not necessarily to have them in the comprehensive plan. And in fact, I believe the public, most of the public, felt that the business as usual meant the current zoning, which is primarily the 5-acre, 1 unit per 5 acres. So that was my logic to have this removed.
Okay.
How about the following sentence? It says, council indicated it would like to evaluate the concept of conservation neighborhoods before making any decisions.
Right, so,
That kind of calms that statement down a little bit, Jack.
Yeah, I honestly knew they were in there, and I thought we were weighing conservation neighborhoods against 3 new developments. I thought that was what the discussion was about. Trying to do conservation neighborhoods where 50% of it is green space. That's why we were weighing the future ideas with the present business as usual. So, I mean, I considered it. I was hoping that we would go farther down the conservation neighborhood route, and that would change these. Maybe eliminate it. Well, I don't know.
yeah,
I think it's curious that, I mean, the subject never came up, although it was in the language.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would recommend that you take the tact that because it wasn't discussed in the council meeting, it not be in the verbiage, because if you look at all the rest of the focus areas, there's all, you could make a long list of items of verbiage that are in those descriptions that you just didn't take up or discuss. This one's curious though, and I'm not sure, I don't recall what the genesis of it was, or why it was in the original draft. Although I'm kind of taken aback to some work that we did a couple of years ago when we recognized, when studying the area, that there are a few areas out there that are already subdivided at a fairly high density, even though it's not zoned that way. And maybe it was the consultant's effort to recognize the fact that those subdivisions of land have already taken place out there and are going to need to be accommodated in the future. It's a good question for them, I think.
It's worth a discussion no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word new makes it seem like they aren't just trying to account for existing
Yeah.
subdivisions.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And the last sentence, which says existing and committed development in the area would remain unchanged, satisfies the requirement to recognize that there are some other alternative zonings in this area already. It just seems curious that we would, at some point in time, have a anticipation of exactly 3 and zoned up to 2 units per acre. I mean,
That would be the conservation neighborhood.
well, the conservation neighborhoods, I think, in the discussion, my understanding of the discussion of conservation neighborhoods, the density would be even higher potentially
Yes.
than that up to 2 units per acre would not apply. So that does not really fit the conservation neighborhood mold.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it might density be higher in center and there'd be green space in the outer areas. So 50% green space is pretty aggressive green space.
I mean, this language seems like more classic subdivisions,
Yes.
you know.
And it is.
It is.
It
Right,
is.
Because
So-
it's business as usual. We didn't
Right,
choose to.
right.
It
But
is.
at a prescribed level. I mean, because right now the zoning out there is 1 unit per 5 acres.
With the exception of what's already platted.
Right, so if you, I
Could
think
be.
if you read the
And it-
discussion in the document, at least the conversations that I've had with primarily Matt about this, when they originally presented this business as usual scenario, they said over the next 10 to 15 years, village council's likely going to be faced with a choice of a subdivision that, you know, R30 is what this is intended to be. And so there's an assumption in there that councils in the future may approve up to 3 R30 neighborhoods. And that, and then the total number of households would be listed there in that first column. So I guess that's really the question is, does council think that that's a reasonable assumption that,
I think if you end this sentence after 1 unit per 5 acres, whatever happens and comes forward to the council can be dealt with.
Right. That was my point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you have an existing, if you have some existing platted lots that are less than 5 acres, they are allowed, they are
Sure.
entitled to a building permit.
Right. And the last sentence actually recognizes that fact.
Which is,
Conservation neighborhoods.
No, it
I
says
think-
existing,
Uncommitted Development.
existing development.
Existing
and
and committed
zoning.
development in the area would remain unchanged.
Yeah, I believe this should be,
Existing and committed- Yeah, this sentence should be included. If you,
I think that as I'm thinking back on the dialogue we've had over the last year or so about the ETJ, I think that the consultants put this in here as a recognition of that this is kind of a continuation of business as usual, because
Right.
in the past, every so often, the council has approved a higher density subdivision in the
yes.
ETJ.
like Royal Oak,
So it was a statement of business as usual.
But to put a number on it
Yeah.
and to even mention it, I think is unnecessary, and I would strongly recommend that sentence be removed.
My only thing is recognizing reality is I thought that they were doing. And so is it realistic to think if we don't have a set formula to go in the conservation ballpark, we can commit down that path? Isn't it logical to think that 1, 2, maybe 3 would be approved over?
What if someone comes along and wants a fourth?
yeah.
No, but I think what they're trying to do,
we're not.
I don't think
tied to one-
you're predicting, you're not saying only 3 or heck, I'd rather have all conservation neighborhoods where there's 50% green space. So, you know, if I'm only on the council for 2 more years. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I thought it was just a recognition of, you have to put a number in there and that's it, but I don't think it means that we're held to that. Does that mean that?
No.
So
It does not.
it just was kind of, that's what's gonna happen with business as usual unless you change the way you do business as usual.
So you're telling me that business as usual says that the council is going to approve up to 3 or 3 exactly new single-family residential neighborhoods that will accommodate, I mean, it just seems unnecessary to state this.
I don't think that this is actually, from a policy standpoint, I don't think this is necessarily the most accurate way
Accurate,
to describe business as usual.
I agree with
Because
that too.
the business as usual was, the zoning is 1 unit per 5 acres with a policy statement that says that it may be acceptable for council to approve higher density in certain situations.
That is business as usual. That is,
Is that how
That is
you
the
prefer it
business as
said?
right.
Yeah.
Is that how you prefer it worded, that
I'd be okay.
council to, say that one more time, Jess?
Well, it
Well, go
really
back and
begs,
look at the language in the current, whatever that is in the current comp plan.
It really begs the question, why would you even need to state what is the obvious, which is council may approve higher density?
Well, because without that
Subdivisions.
statement in there as a policy statement, you can't approve it and have it be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Restate how you would phrase that?
Which permits conditional district rezoning.
That's right, exactly
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul,
Which is how people.
Then you have to control it in the PDO to change that if that's what you want.
Yeah, and we, I could go back to, from what I understand from people that were here when the public dialogue took place, the reason the language is, and the zoning is as it is in the ETJ today, and the language associated with that in our comprehensive plan, is that there was a recognition that if you zoned it at 1 unit per 5 acres, and had first off, it's not likely that it would ever be developed at that density to any great extent. And it would give you the ability to have some leverage on the type and quality of development in select cases where you wanted to approve a higher density. And when I say higher density, you know, the watershed requirement is 1 per acre.
And the other caveat would be
Yeah,
with infrastructure already there
right.
Right.
You mean if it is, or,
pertaining to water, sewer.
yeah.
In the interest of trying to get something everybody agree with, you know, I personally don't want to see higher density without 50% or more green space. And it sounds consistent with the discussions we've been having,
Right.
and it might be more reflective of what we need. And even our old plan recommended that that's the ideal situation. And our present one is even going stronger in that direction with character-based development. So maybe that's the middle ground, but it may not be. But it's just, but it might help planning and zoning if they had some clarity, you know.
Yeah. I think Jeff articulated it well, I'm just not sure I caught it all, but I think he said council may approve higher density in certain conditions, or with certain conditions.
There's a statement
Yeah.
along those lines in the current comprehensive plan. I
yeah,
can't,
but that is business as usual.
sorry?
That is business as usual.
That is business as usual.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay,
What about the
Alright.
statement about conservation neighborhoods
I
that's
think
here
you'd
in
leave
your
that
memo?
in.
leave that in.
Leave that in.
Okay, all right, we'll modify that
And
language.
I
Wait,
was
hold
trying to
on,
make it
let me
stronger.
understand, what is going to happen here? What is going to be included or excluded here?
So I'm going to
Strike the first
strike
sentence.
the language.
That says,
Specifying
It
3
says
as single-family
three, right.
residential, yeah.
Well, I think-
He's right, it's arbitrary.
You're changing that to be just a general,
A general
I think you just
statement.
strike the first sentence because you just have a dangling phrase otherwise. And put in your sentence you're talking about.
I'd like to hear that context because the documentation as to our meeting on the 26th specifically says nothing about that exception of new single-family, and that is in fact what we discussed and approved. So we're changing something on the fly here. I'm a little concerned about that.
that's why you're here talking about it.
Exactly.
It's in the document,
Yeah.
On the fly that
and
you
I'm
don't
okay
like.
with talking about changing it, but
What is it we're changing on the fly, Jack, that you don't like?
Well, we added a phrase,
we're getting rid
The
of 3.
phrase is,
So you want to get rid of the word.
with the exception of 3 new single-family residential neighborhoods that could accommodate up to 2 dwellings per acre. That was
I'm
never.
okay with that. Are we all okay with eliminating that?
I am.
Okay,
We're adding,
So what I want to be clear is the impact analysis right here. They had to, the consultants plugged in assumptions into Community Vis, and their assumptions were that there would be some development in there approved at 1 unit per half acre. I do not know what the grand total number of that is, but
Well,
that's,
They will rerun the analysis based upon our documentation of what we desire for each focus area. Some of the focus areas have changed quite a bit. For example, the one around the
Right.
post office, we eliminated quite a bit of property from that focus
Correct.
area. So they will rerun these scenarios
Correct.
based upon new assumptions, so I don't see where that's an issue.
I just wanted to make
I
you
thought you
aware that
said
that's.
watershed would
that's
require one dwelling unit per acre.
Per acre, yeah.
Per acre.
Unless you want to do a special intensity allocation.
And they
You don't
calculated,
usually do it for residential development.
Right.
And you don't think there's any value in saying,
Well, conservation neighborhoods is an entirely different thing.
you don't think there's any value in saying that higher density won't be approved without like a 50% green space? or something
Seems
like
too
that?
specific at this
I think there's
point.
value in
And I
that.
mean, I'm just trying to add more teeth to it, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, we haven't really defined conservation neighborhood well enough.
Yeah.
We need to probably do that in the PDO.
We did with
Evaluating the
50%
concept.
green space at least, and then.
well, Fish and Wildlife actually recommended their standards of 40% open space. So I think until you actually evaluate conservation neighborhoods
evaluate
and
it.
decide whether you want it to be 50 or 40.
Here's what I'm trying to do, I'm
Whatever,
trying to
right.
eliminate people
Not
going in front of planning and zoning
Right.
without the preconceived notion that there's trade-offs for density. And I thought we'd help them by doing this, but
I think that what Natalie's saying is that's what you want to see done as part of the implementation
Is implement.
okay.
of this.
I'm just-
There's
Yeah.
a strategy to study.
When they have the information ahead of time,
Yeah,
Okay.
these are
Okay,
the conditions to improve.
right.
Okay.
I think we're good on that.
On what?
On that one.
With
Taking
the
out,
general statement or?
taking out the number
Number, yeah.
of single-family neighborhoods.
Because it was a guess.
And advising the
And-
consultants to take that, change those
Assumptions.
assumptions and
Correct.
rerun the scenarios.
Yes.
But acknowledging that there are parcels out there that are already zoned to be developed.
That, the last sentence addresses that
About
sufficiently.
existing and committed development.
So it's not business as usual then?
It's really not.
Yeah, it's changed.
It's changing.
Business as usual is now changed.
The last three
The
words.
fundamental
about-
change to
about in the
business.
the last three words, I think, are in the future, which is.
My concern is, I thought Jack had a good point, it's arbitrary, it's a guess, and it could be
Yeah.
one, and
Let's
so
take
I
out
agree
the
with
phrase.
that. I'm not sure, there shouldn't be a sentence there that doesn't say,
Put that in the PDO.
That what says, oh,
that doesn't have the
50%.
number in there, because I think he's right. But
well, if you're not allowing for any higher density development, what's the point?
But we do in our business as usual model, is that correct?
and I tried to define it.
Isn't business as usual mean that the ability to do conditional zoning still applies?
You'd have to say it here.
You have to say it here, that's why I'm concerned.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
you have to
get at,
say
is you
it.
need to say it here. It's not going to be in the policy for the new plan, you know?
Right, if you want comp plan consistency.
And I tried to go more than say it, I tried to define it.
Yeah.
And 40% or greater green space. I want 50, but if 40 is what the forester says.
Yeah.
At least you eliminate people coming in front of planning and zoning without an understanding there's trade-offs.
Right. I agree with all that, Kevin. I'm just saying that without having an allowance,
Let's put it in there. The number, 40%.
without having a statement in here that says that you can have any development higher than 1 unit per 5 acres, what's the point of the statement saying that there's 50%?
Well, my concern was Jack's that had an arbitrary number, not that you wouldn't allow it. I thought I heard him say business as usual allows it with conditions.
Yeah.
And I'm saying those conditions, at a minimum, should be 40% green space.
Why not just add the sentence, conditional zoning provisions may still apply?
Okay.
Is that enough to? for
It opens the
comp
door
plan?
for conditional zoning.
Why do you want to do it?
To accommodate,
Because we
Well, I
have
don't have to say what it
conservation
accommodates, it just say conditional zoning,
No.
Provisions
stuck
may-
at 1 unit per 5 acres.
which may accommodate a higher density,
Yeah.
something to that
We haven't
effect.
like
landed
that,
on a
yeah.
number, we haven't landed on 40, 50%.
Leo, you're already
50%.
using that, right?
Yeah,
Trying to have,
I think Kevin's right. I mean, if we say conditional zoning, conditions may apply with a requirement of 40%,
Yeah, and add that,
Green
then you can add
space.
that statement in,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say. Let's not just say loosey, let's say factual.
Yeah.
Because That will
Consistent
stop
with the
people
national-
from going in front of planning and zoning that don't understand that there are trade-offs.
Leo, what do you think?
I do think that if you put the policy statement in here, implementation is going to, is going to result in specific PDO language that prevents what you're talking about. But
But
the
you
question
want,
is, right, do you want to make it, do you want to make 40% policy without studying the issue? Or do you
think
want
we need
to
to study
study the issue and make?
I thought the Forest Service already did. I heard the Forest
yeah,
Service.
I would say
guidelines.
go to the Forest Service.
They're
rather than
guidelines.
something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all,
People
whatever
were
we put
restricted.
here can be changed.
They can't.
So,
Yeah, but I feel like I'm just trying to give them tools to accomplish what we want. That's all I'm
and
trying.
in the interim, you've got that as a safety net.
Yeah.
Because right now, that's
Is
not.
that all clear?
There's got to be some control with respect to open space.
Yeah.
It has to say something, 50, 40, 30,
Okay,
whatever.
Cool.
Or else they can go down to whatever they want to with the existing conditional district rezoning provision.
Well, they can propose it, but we don't have to approve it.
And I would say 50%
That's
or
true,
greater
too.
if I was.
There's a lot of other
king
conditions
or
associated
greater.
with that process.
So if you put in a number, at least they know what they're aiming at. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
The intent of the conservation neighborhoods was 50%, so.
But I'm trying to say there could be somebody that did a really good job that maybe could meet the 40% parameter. I doubt it, if I was on planning and zoning, but it could be, you know. So I'm trying not to let my bias affect, you know, some common principles.
With the watershed limitation of 1 unit per acre and 50% open space, isn't that enough control?
That should be enough, because you got 100 acres, 50 are natural, and you get 1 unit per acre. However you wanna, you know,
Yeah,
configure it.
however you want to
Cut and paste.
slide that left or
Configure
right.
it, yeah.
Yeah,
50, 40, you know, I'm okay with us agreeing on whatever that is.
now, what about studying the conservation neighborhoods? You still have to do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
because it's not in the PDO.
Yeah, we've got to establish
We don't know
a
what that
standard
is
for it.
yet.
Right.
Yeah, there are two different issues. One is a subdivision, and one is conservation development. It has different parameters. But they have some of the same characteristics, which is kind of cool. We have two different things that are playing on the same field, you know, the same restrictions. I mean, maybe not the same, but close. I kind of like the consistency of
The required open space.
that. Yeah.
I think you got the idea.
Effort to move on.
I believe you're going to find some wording
I'm
and,
gonna word it, and I'm gonna email just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
wording.
right.
to make sure I
and
got
keep
it.
in mind at
Yeah.
all times that
Yeah.
there is going to be a draft 2,
Yeah, yeah.
which in fact is subject to extensive review and/or potential some small changes, hopefully.
Correct.
I think we got something
We'll
done
replace
there.
that language.
I like that. I like we got something done
Okay,
there.
we got something done,
Great.
all right.
Moving on. Okay, so one of the attachments in your document was the top votes that were received, the strategies that received the top votes during the comprehensive plan.
Strategies that receive the top votes.
Yeah, so the second attachment was top votes. And this is where we wanted to go back and see, make sure we didn't, council didn't eliminate maybe a top vote getting strategy. So this is kind of like a double check. And when we went through this and went through with the planning and zoning board, there was a strategy that received quite a bit of votes from the public that was removed from the plan. And a member of the P&Z board brought that up, and that was the one that's listed here as 7-2.
You know why we eliminated it? Because it
Well,
sounds
yeah.
consistent with what we want to accomplish, maybe because we said it 5
Yeah,
different ways.
So in hindsight,
Yeah.
when I went back through all the strategies again, as you can imagine, it gets a little confusing at times.
Mhm.
But we said we combined it with
Right.
another one. So
Yes.
I just wanted to bring it to your attention that P&Z looked at it. You may feel that it is actually already incorporated into another strategy, but I just wanted for it to be clear, because this one did receive so many votes.
What is the other strategy?
Leo, did you look at the combined one? Did it solve your issue? Because if it doesn't solve Leo's issue as the combined one, I'd be interested.
I have not yet.
Okay, so it's 2.13 is the new one. So 2.13 is the new one, and that is the strategy to consider the adoption of character-based zoning and pattern books to promote high-quality design and development.
So we're now looking in the revised.
Well, I guess he's concerned that that doesn't talk specifically about the issues in the ETJ. Is that correct? Because that talks more about PDO.
Speak to us, Leo, speak to
Wait,
us.
show us where you're looking,
I'm getting
Natalie.
there, I'm sorry, hold on, I'll get there for you.
I'll wait.
So then,
2.13?
Which chart are you at?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
2.13
2.13.
takes care of the one
I'll order the one
that we
in
deleted?
order. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up the one that's in order. I have a couple.
I mean, I like the one you were in, but that's okay.
Right. Why was it taken
Why
out?
was it taken out?
I don't think it should, I think, I don't believe it should be taken out. I think Leo has a good point there. I think the pattern books and the character-based zoning do address specific requirements, but I thought 7.2 really was more broad, and I'll read it as the latest statement, which is, review the zoning regulations for areas identified for future development to ensure that the zoning permits the desired scale of development. Conversely, ensure that the zoning in place for any new areas identified for development does not permit undesirable building patterns. It's sort of vague, and yet at the same time, I think it goes after what the community is after, which is quality and scale of development.
If it's repetitive, I think it's worth repeating.
I think it is too.
So let's
because
leave it in.
I think this one, I think the one that we changed is more about our existing borders, and this one's outside of our existing borders.
And I think it would be part of the review of the PDO and zoning regulations.
Doesn't mention the ETJ at all.
It's just new areas,
It just says
zoning
for
in
future
new
development.
areas.
Okay.
It's,
I think that, and Derek can correct me if I'm wrong, you have more experience with pattern books and this type of zoning regulation. But the whole intent is to ensure compatibility of scale,
Yeah,
and the character-based piece of it is our attempt to get at quality.
And
You
scale.
can use them both. I mean, you can get it at both well, the quality of the development can be dictated also by the size of the development, so that can be in form. So the form of,
Form-based.
you can get at both of those with character-based. You can get at scale with character-based.
So,
but do you agree that the one that we eliminated, it doesn't hurt? to
No,
leave
it doesn't
this
hurt.
in?
It doesn't hurt. It just, it
Doesn't hurt
bolsters
to
the
leave it
case
in.
for,
Bolsters the case. I'm like bolstering the case.
I also believe it's more understandable to someone reading the document versus character better.
I agree with that. As long as when we get to the implementation, we recognize that when we do one, we're doing the other.
yeah, exactly.
Well, you'll know, you'll know.
Yeah, it doesn't say TJ, but it infers, it infers a lot of things, and that's why I like it.
I think
The
we
other
should
thing
leave
is
it.
we sort of latched onto that shiny new thing called character-based, form-based, pattern books and all, and to Jack's point, that's not,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
not
in.
really obvious to somebody, but this is really the thing that's driving most of our intent. And I think that's,
I think you know
What if we
from,
combine that language with the other language?
I think that's fine.
You could, either way.
I like it being I like it repeating. As you know, I'm pretty redundant anyway. I like being redundant in the document.
Karen, don't tell anybody you're redundant.
I like saying it twice in a different manner.
Well,
Someone else can understand.
The numbers imply that it's under different principles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
But
number,
then there's a lot of
Well, we
commingling.
typically, we've got several cases like that
Yeah.
already where we just refer to.
Right, that's true.
That's the way it's written in
If you're
there.
concerned, them conflicting each other, that's a solid concern. If they're saying the same thing, I think I'm okay with it.
I just don't want to be confused during implementation about, was this something?
I agree with
different?
that. I think that, we're gonna need some help from our planning and zoning to see if that will, if it will
We'll
provide.
know it's together, we know. So I'm hearing keep 7-2 in.
Correct.
7-2.
Right,
Thank
take
you.
Leo's
Are you going
recommendation.
to park it in 7 or some other place?
It will be part, no, it
Two
will
somewhere.
go, it'll go to 2.
Okay, I think that's better. The earlier it's in there, the better.
It'll be in 2 with the others. Yep.
Okay. So
So then the next thing on my note is I gave you a summary of all the strategies that were deleted or combined.
Right.
And going through all those, it looked like we had 20 strategies that were really eliminated and 41 strategies that were really combined with other strategies. So what I did here for you is I gave a summary that describes here are the 20 that were eliminated and why. For example, the farmer's market was, council felt there were other higher priorities in the farmer's market. So you can see most of the ones that were actually eliminated did not actually receive a lot of public support when you look at the number of votes for them. There was no interest in microtransit service on 421. And then again, most of these did not receive a lot of votes, and we just dealt with 7.2, which we've decided to retain.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of like my double check.
Like a sanity check.
I went back and I gave you the new strategy number that it kind of got combined into with. So if you wanted a cross map, you could do that, okay? So that's what that attachment was. And then finally, a summary of all of the strategies in order of number. So this attachment, so we could find things, is in order number, not timeline or any other order. So the revised strategies list, like I said, is in order of
Appearance?
new recommendation number. Okay.
New recommendation.
Is in order of new recommendation number.
Yep.
So if you want to go back and double check old strategies, new strategies, all of that is listed there. That makes sense? And so then what I did is I went back through the news, so I identified how many new strategies we added. So I'm basically trying to account for the changes that you've made. The deletions, the modifications, the additions, the new ones. And so I summarized the new strategies, and I gave the numbers here in the memo, and explained why, or what area those were in that council chose to add. So, page 56 of the original document, it indicated that based on the focus area selections, additional recommendations would be coming, based on what council chose for those areas. So we had 7 strategies that council chose to add as a result of the focus areas. And then we had 6 strategies in there that are currently, there are 6 strategies that were added, which are things that are currently in our strategic operating plan that we felt were appropriate. So, for example, the West Pinehurst Park Master Plan, the 3rd fire station evaluation. Those are things that we've already have in our strategic operating plan list. So those were added. That's what these are. These 5 are, you may recall we had a lengthy discussion about what are the specific things we need to do to enhance the village center. And we asked our consultants for recommendations, but we came up with some ideas ourselves, and that's what those 5 strategies are. 2 strategies related to residential design, another 2 to facilitate conservation efforts. Those were the recommendations that came from U.S. Fish and Wild, or NC Fish and Wildlife, the Green Growth Toolbox, those kinds of things. We added 2 more strategies for energy conservation and recycling at the council's preference, and then we added another single strategy for historic preservation efforts. Thinking about space here in Village Hall. We felt golf carts, council felt golf carts were not adequately addressed in the plan, so you added a strategy relative to that. Also a strategy for partnerships for expanding recreation facilities in the future. And then another strategy related to trees and landscaping right-of-ways, that monitoring the health of trees in the right-of-way. So those are the strategies that have been added. Okay?
Okay.
So I wanted to just give you an overview of that. Leo, do you want to talk a little bit about pedestrian overpasses? P&Z does have 2 suggestions on maybe how to, some rewording of some strategies, so Leo, I'll let you.
Yeah,
take it from here.
We didn't feel, well, those of the members that are present, were present at this meeting when this item was discussed. It wasn't the full board. But we had a problem with the appearance and the character of a pedestrian bridge or overpass. It doesn't look like Pinehurst. There's other ways that it could be done, probably more expensive, yes, with underpass, or high in the sky, building sky bridge
Yeah.
from the second floor of a building.
Because we live in Minneapolis.
That would look a little bit better than a bridge.
Shouldn't there be an
A
assumption made that-
a bridge could be hazardous in inclement weather, unless it's enclosed. So rather than say a pedestrian overpass or bridge, just to modify that to say just ensure safe pedestrian crossings.
I think that's a fair
I think
change.
that's a fair change.
I don't, I assume that we won't allow it built if it doesn't meet the character. So I disagree. I think we should have high standards and not allow anything to happen that doesn't meet the character, but eliminating something. But I agree with the underpass statement. I agree with, you know, the crossing, but I don't think we should shoot anything down.
Kevin, just because we're saying consider ways to ensure safe pedestrian crossing, that doesn't mean if somebody comes up with this beautiful sky bridge or something, that it wouldn't be.
It would meet this. This
It
is
would
more
meet that.
general, it gives you more
Okay, I'm
flexibility.
okay, but I mean.
Yeah,
over-
but you lose the character, though, out of this. That's the only thing I'm
Well, that's
concerned
not
about.
always true. I've seen
It
things
would
that have
be-
that character.
No, but the requirement for it to be in character is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I won't want anything out of character either, so I
Yeah.
agree with that.
And it's,
And it's not in the historic district,
But I
so.
thought that we got this data from the First Health, from their input. So
did they want a sky
are we
bridge?
either listening to our partners or not listening to our partners?
Pedestrian overpass?
This does not preclude
Okay.
that from being allowed in the
Okay.
future.
Okay.
It doesn't preclude
But
it, so I think you're
underpass is
okay.
a great
It,
alternative,
or, yeah,
great alternative.
See, I think underpasses are not as safe.
that's correct. They also flood more
But
apparently.
we have to assume we're not going to allow anything out of character.
No, well, true,
They're not
true.
going to.
No,
Walking
Well,
around,
won't meet the PDO either, because,
somebody could
But
be
the PDO
walking
either, so.
so it'd have to be conditional
Yeah,
zoning.
Just don't make the
versus
rash
thinking it's more
assumption that everything
in public
is going
view.
to be built on character.
I think ensuring safe pedestrian crossings could mean a lot
Lot
of
of
things.
things.
Yeah.
And it
It's a
would be
real
a judgment
passionate
call.
issue for me. I want no one getting run over.
So I think I hear consensus that everyone's okay with
Yes.
going with the language that the P and Z board is
Yes.
recommending?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
thank you.
And then there was another recommendation there, Leo, for 4.16, similar in terms of making it more general. So you want to talk about that one as well?
Rather than, say, encourage employees to park off-street, rather than in on-street spaces, to change the wording to make it, I don't know, maybe a little bit softer and to provide the village businesses to identify solutions.
We've
Let
tried-
them come up with how they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think
To
that's,
benefit them more in the long run.
I think
That's-
it says it better than the original wording.
right.
I think so,
Because we've
too.
said the original wording over and over again, and here we are saying.
Yeah, we just- we
consider
don't- we
working
can't
with-
Just
do it.
softened it, and
Yeah, no, I
I
think,
got bruises and scars from the last time we talked about this. Being soft has not worked.
No, it doesn't. All those real
We
estate
have to be
ladies.
really clear.
Solutions, I
That
think,
softens it, I'm not for soft.
solutions have to come from the businesses themselves.
I thought
they
so
have-
too, but it's not
Is it?
happening.
Well,
It's
I'm
not
sorry, but the
happening, but we're
businesses
not
have to
gonna-
they have to define them and they have to enforce them on their place. If this is what we're driving at. So for us to work and encourage them, I'm all for that.
I think I'm the only business that have fired employees for parking in front of the business.
Good for you.
Well, you're one of how many?
No, I'm the only one. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, it's time to get
That's why you have so
serious
much
about
turnover.
this. It's time to get serious about it.
Can't keep a chef.
we, no, we,
They're gonna have to come to the village to do something anyway,
yeah,
because Do anything in the village, you need a permit.
No,
I'm
that-
okay with you guys voting me up and down on this. I'm
No.
not trying
County needs
to-
to buy more businesses.
But I disagree. I disagree that this is a time to soften that statement.
I will say this too, the way it's currently worded, it deals specifically with Village Center, but we could have this issue in Village Place one day in the future,
Right.
so I felt it was
That's,
appropriate
I agree with that.
to take the Village Center language out and just
Yeah.
make it general village businesses.
Right, yeah, I agree with that. And more importantly, actually, it says continue to encourage employees. What employees? Is that village employees?
No, businesses, employees.
Yeah,
I mean-
yeah,
Yeah, it's,
You want to split hairs on this one here.
yeah, I think we're,
You gotta understand, the
I like the
mentality
rephrasing.
is, the mentality is, since everyone else is doing it, I'm doing it.
I know.
or the people that won't park on Chinquapin, but will go on Market Street.
Right, exactly.
Don't move them.
Yeah, I think we should have parking meters that would, just hear me out, that are electronic, and all you have to do is put up your iPhone, and if you're a resident and not an employee or not a business owner, you park free.
The state will have something to say about it. The
How
state
do you
dictates
know
how we
you're
manage parking.
Not an employee.
Really?
How can
Yeah.
a smartphone tell if you're not an employee?
We don't get any of that money,
If you are an employee.
right? We don't get any of that money, right? Or very little of it.
We don't get it.
oh,
Well,
parking ticket?
Parking, it's totally out of our hands.
It's not a money
I
thing.
don't, trying to recall, we've been through this
Yeah,
a
we've
long
been
time since we discussed it.
The shop, the
What I
state
recall,
dictates this.
We can't prevent, legally, we can't prevent an employee from parking in a public space.
Right.
Public space.
And if we issue a ticket, it can't be more than $5.
Well, would it be okay with you,
Can,
If
Not
only if
according to our
you're
current code.
physically giving it to them.
would it be
We
okay
don't have
to
that kind of
create strategies
force.
to incentivize employees to park? Create strategies to incentivize employees to have businesses create strategies to incentivize employees to park in the sandlot.
Name
Well,
one
I think Leo's suggested rewording addresses the issue here. I think we could move on.
And I would ask the consultants for anything, any brilliant ideas that have worked other places.
Right. Good luck.
We can ask them for that.
I know.
They do not support
I know,
time
there's no
limit.
silver bullet, I get it.
I would not
Parking.
support time limit
Yeah, they don't
parking either.
support that.
Nobody else has it.
It's unfriendly, time limit parking to the shoppers.
Okay.
You can't shop much.
I would leave it as, again, as Leo
Yeah.
has
As
suggested.
Leo, okay.
Okay, we're all
All
for
right,
that.
we will use that language. Then the primary purpose, the meat of the discussion is the timelines for the strategy. So I have that spreadsheet pulled up here.
But what was the methodology?
What was my methodology?
Yeah. I mean, I get, because
Leo?
I couldn't figure out I'm now onto this new,
Okay.
the in combination by time frame and in order of
Yeah, I'm
importance.
trying to pull up the spreadsheet.
There were
Like
things that,
timeframe and order of importance, is that what we are, Judy?
Right.
yeah, the spreadsheet.
Look at it right here.
That the
Like, how did-
8-1.
How did the five most importance
8-1,
end up as
19-ish.
being in that order?
Yeah.
Oh,
just in the numerical order.
no, so basically I went to, this was my method. I went to the big list of strategies in number order that we went through. So I started at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and I just said, and then I put in a time frame. I mean, I just went in number order of the
They're
strategy.
just number order.
Yeah, versus, I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so I was just
Yeah.
trying to understand
I'm just trying to- yeah.
Because what I thought we were gonna see was how the votes and the time frame and the importance work together. And,
So I
and you
gave
got,
you,
and you got, 310 is the least important of the most importance on this page. But-
I think that's in a different sort of
those are not
sit.
in order.
They're not even listed, all they're just in numerical order. Staff wasn't making an attempt to prioritize beyond what you already said. So
Yeah, correct.
we're
So-
saying
Yeah.
most important is most important.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
are not in any order, Judy.
Okay.
We
All right,
emphasize
okay.
the
These are
importance.
not-
All right, I thought that's what
Yeah.
that's what I thought we were gonna see.
No, you said most important, it's just in the most important bucket.
Yeah, but I also thought I'd said it last time, see how the dollars and the time and the emphasis come together.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
put all of it here.
But they aren't ranked, is what I'm saying.
No, they're not ranked. There was
Not in
no
order
intent to
of-
rank them.
There's just order of, in the
On the initiative.
sequential entry in the
Yeah,
Of
thing.
the
that's all.
initiative,
Okay, that-
one,
that's
2,
good.
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
so then you give an example back here on your email.
Like stormwater?
Let's see, let me find your email. You say that, yeah, so your example of 3.2 to identify alternative locations for the public services complex is shown as costing between $0 and $50,000. Okay.
Correct.
So, and then, but I also thought that 3.1 and 3.5, you know, you had that like $1 million for 3.1,
I
the new
do.
fire station.
Because it says and purchase land.
But you also
What
say,
page are you on, Judy?
well, in the memo, I'm on the next to the last page.
So we're doing sorted by time frame and order of importance.
Okay.
I was in the subject.
Okay, yeah.
Well, on this spreadsheet,
And earlier in that paragraph at the top of this page, you say,
Uh-huh.
you know, it's a reflective of our culture to fully evaluate concepts to
Right.
ensure decisions are made. So to me, you know, with this one, you went all the way.
For the fire station?
Yeah, for the fire station.
Because
Yeah.
the birdie's already been completed.
Okay,
Because we did the birdie for the fire station.
okay. Right,
You've got
We
those
had this
recommendations,
conversation,
yeah.
yeah.
And then the purchase of the land, I think, will be over 200,000, so that's why it's a $3 sign.
That presentation was already made to the council.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really not,
That's 200,000 though. That's what's in the budget.
it's 200, but based upon those categories, it was 50 to 200,000. You could have put it as two.
It could be $2.
It could be
it's-
$2
we're kind of
signs. Yeah,
splitting
yeah.
hairs, it's round
Yeah,
line.
okay, all
$3
right.
signs is fine with me.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And
Good
then,
question, though.
and then 3.5 says prepare a comprehensive stormwater plan, also at $3 signs. But it seems like that's still back, I mean, that's earlier stage than what the dollars reflect. So help me understand why,
So it doesn't say just evaluate whether we should, it says prepare a stormwater
so we
master plan.
think it's gonna cost us over $200,000
I
to
think-
prepare.
It'd be a big
stormwater?
deal.
It's a guess.
Okay,
It's a big deal.
okay, all
Yeah,
right.
it's a big deal.
It,
You know,
it's,
Spreadsheets are guessing.
I don't
Okay,
know.
all right, I just want to understand the rationale.
In
Yeah.
aggregate, all the guesses
It
together
might be
usually are
less.
right,
It
but
might be less,
individually, they're
but
wrong a lot.
Okay,
So, go ahead, Judy, I'm sorry.
no, that's, okay, I'm done.
I was going to say,
I guess, you know, this is, what you've got here is not even staff's initial cut, as Natalie's
this,
This is not,
my
all
personal-
you've done is-
Natalie's
This is
initial
my
cut, and
personal-
there's plenty of
yeah.
time for you all to give feedback on whether or not some of these things should slide left or right or
right,
down.
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
well, there's no
We need to
question
lay that
that things are going to slide. I mean, you've got 30 of these items in the first 1-2 years. I mean, you're going to be a busy bunch of people
well,
here.
that's
mean,
not
I-
to mention when you get to go ongoing at the end,
Yeah.
Yeah.
your eyes roll.
Yeah, to use Judy's phrase the other day, I think these are kind of boiling the ocean, and we're going to boil a lot of the ocean in the first 2 years, it looks like.
But when I did
I
my
have
evaluation,
concern.
I split them up, and when we did the group, you know, the group dynamic, everything changed. You know, I had it all divided up over years.
Well,
But
well,
they
this
aren't
is divided up
commitments, right?
too, but, you know,
So my suggestion for you today would be to look at the 1 to 2 year bucket first and say, is that really, is there anything in that 1 to 2 year bucket that we think should slide?
Or could slide.
Or could
Could
slide?
slide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
or
then-
could slide.
And remember, a lot of the PDO amendment things are in the 1 to 2 year bucket.
Right, so what you see in the 1 to 2 year bucket is very, very heavy on the planning department.
I don't think that can be changed.
Well,
We could
it could,
Not if we
It
really
could.
wanted to.
but you,
Present and say we don't need it all up front.
right, so you've already
Character-based
funded,
development is a pretty strong,
so you've already funded a small area plan for Village Place. That was a very high priority by residents and the focus area choices as well.
Can I ask a question while you're talking about that small area plan? Does that include the traditions?
and that's not
that's not our
rattlesnake.
property.
It, It can, yeah,
As long
yeah.
as it's
it
not our
absolutely can.
property that
This-
we're
This
paying.
actual boundary of that is
We're not
not
gonna worry about that.
finalized.
Okay.
That's correct. It could-
It's not in those places.
And Traditions already has,
An owner.
well, it already has.
And zoning
design.
approval.
In Village Place.
Goes on forever, right?
Okay,
As long as they come back and build to that.
Exactly the way it was proposed and approved.
Yeah, it's gonna have to change.
so there's that. Then there's, potential ETJ expansion. If you want to consider that, then that could be something that slides. You've got all of the PDO amendments, the character-based, all of that stuff is sitting in, 1 to 2 years.
But I think that's where it belongs.
There's tree preservation, there's a lot of stuff in here, as it's using Community Viz now to quantify impacts of stormwater, and other, development impacts. That's a new, thing. So I think the planning department's likely going to be,
Snapped.
very heavily tasked.
But Natalie, isn't this prioritization and what we're going to do next year and the following year, the decision based upon the strategic meetings that are held in the December timeframe?
Correct.
So to have the list is good. I'm not arguing that. But for us to prioritize and pretend to specify exactly when they're going to be done seems premature. That's for the planning session for the next council to do in December, isn't it?
So,
I think if
and-
we waited to do this until then, it would overcome the whole
Yeah,
process.
strategic
We have to have at
plans
least
have to have a loose
I think it's
framework.
fine to do this now, but I think we need to allow for more input from staff on what they can possibly do.
Right.
yeah,
I would take your
because
input.
Can I say something as early, this was gonna be my opening comment when we did this, and we got off on a question, but, my opening comment was going to be that, number one, this was like Jeff mentioned, this was my first pass, it will change. The intent is to get a general idea right now.
Yes, what's
Things will
important.
slide.
Yeah.
Because what will happen is, when we go into strategic planning in November, then we will sit down and say, can the planning staff do all this? Council, if you really want all of that done in 1 to 2 years, we might need these additional resources, or you might need to contract this, or
Yeah,
you might need
contract.
to do
Yeah,
this,
source
right?
it. Yep. I bought that.
Then the council at that time will weigh those costs and benefits and make those decisions. So that this matrix will, according to the plan, will be revised
Yeah.
and will change by, and be finalized next February. So we do it now, get an idea,
Yep.
and then when we go into retreat,
It's a start point.
November, December, January, that council will change it based on
Yeah, and for
what it
clarity-
costs to actually, because we'll have to come up with estimates of
The
costs and
strategic
analyze
plan
how long it'll take to do
is
things.
a framework. And-
Correct.
And in December, we're literally making decisions where staff are graded on outcomes, which is different than a framework, which is the strategic plan. It's, what we do in December is specific, and this is a framework.
Right. There are several things in here that will impact staff capacity, capabilities, could potentially impact
So maybe,
future operating budgets, you
Okay.
know.
maybe this is a two-pronged attack coming at from different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I got through this and I got to ongoing, I felt like I choked. And, it's like, how can anybody possibly do this? If you just said, okay,
Yeah.
this will be a minimum amount of work of 3 weeks for somebody, or, 15 work days. How do you get this done? So maybe another way to come back to it, because a lot of this stuff we said is ongoing. And so I'm concerned about that classification, because is it really
Right.
2 more minutes out of somebody's day or 2 more months out of somebody's
Or is
day
it
You
job?
move it to 1 and 2
Or is
years?
it just random?
Some of them are those.
Yeah, they flow in, they flow out,
Yeah.
whatever. So maybe another category here is level of effort, to staff effort to make it happen. And look at 1 and 2 years in the
That's
same
fair.
way. Because I think in the abstract, It's hard to know. I mean, I would say everything on the PDO I'd want to push forward with, because the sooner we get that done,
But it's the same people, we gotta do that.
I completely understand that. I completely understand that. So, but we need to understand, you know, if we can't get to character-based as a potential hope
Right.
for development, quality development in our community, we need to know sooner than later that we can't get there.
Yeah, right.
So, so let's don't hold out this fantasy for people.
Right.
And if we have to contract and outsource it to get there, let's do it.
So are you suggesting, Judy, that in addition to type, and we've had this conversation internally, level of effort, do we put a level of effort column here? Is that what you're suggesting, a different category?
Yeah, and I mean, I could go through this and I could create some,
I think this is what she's saying.
Oh, the type, yeah.
But,
yeah, LOA, yeah,
Level of
Yeah,
effort.
I like that.
yeah.
And I almost take it one step further, if possible, categorize it by
Outsource.
staff section impacted.
yeah,
So you could have a code system that says
how
like.
many FTEs are impacted?
Planning 1, or planning
Yeah.
2, or planning 3, or planning 4.
And is it possible to outsource it?
So I started doing the.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that when we asked for staff input, isn't that what we're getting? You know, when we said we wanted, we're getting, you know,
No.
what can be accomplished.
We gave what we thought was
Well, okay,
important
yeah.
and when it should be done.
No, I'm talking about when we get staff input on what, and how to eat this elephant one bite at a time.
Exactly, that's what.
Wouldn't that be
should
the same as
staff.
what Judy's asking?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're looking for level of effort,
yeah, and then,
and then departments impacted,
and I think, you know, maybe
responsible.
You can get that way, yeah.
we should come
I was
back.
thinking you combine them, you know, just call it a, like a coding system. It's planning, if it's a planning department, it would be P, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, or something, you know?
You're gonna have to invent a quantification schedule. You're gonna invent a new way to quantify this.
Yeah.
What's, you want to do?
We've been doing that a lot,
scale of 4 for effort?
inventing
1,
new
2,
ways to
3, 4?
quantify.
Will you tell us what the scale
What
is?
is for?
Except when I use five.
Definitely
I
not
do like
six.
4.0 scales.
I think it's a way to communicate to staff,
Freudian slip.
to communicate to the council what you guys know you can accomplish.
Okay, we can do that, I can add a level.
But then our piece of input should be, I mean, even though these 5 things are the most important, they're very important, we probably need to do a little bit more granular level of figuring out what are the themes and what is it we're really trying to push forward. Because some of these are related, some aren't,
Right,
you know, and, you know, without, I mean, just looking at it in the spreadsheet format is one way, but
Right.
there needs to be some nesting of things, and maybe we can all do that.
They're in there, aren't they?
Yeah, I can see the staff,
Okay.
I can see us thinking things are hard and staff think they're easy, and us thinking they're easy and staff thinking that they're
Well,
gonna be
but I
all
think
consuming.
correlating that's why I was thinking there could be a quantitative version of this, you know, but
Does that make sense?
maybe that's not easy.
Yeah.
Have we ever known Natalie to say no?
Yeah, that's the thing. We need
That's the
to
problem, isn't it?
get more assertive on no.
I think when the strategies are read in the context of this document,
Right.
it makes so much sense. And again, when you go
And
into
it doesn't even have the
November
infographics in it.
and December retreats, you're gonna be refocusing on what's really, really important to move on
Yeah.
quickly.
So let's don't confuse this document with what we do in December.
so for
Very
today,
No,
For
it's a
today.
feeder document,
yeah, so for today,
absolutely.
can we just, to your point, Judy, I mean, I think we'll get the department, we'll get a level of effort. This will still be continued to be refined. But in general, when you went through and you looked at the 1 to 2 year bucket, did you say, absolutely not, I think that should be in 3 to 5 or 5 plus? Were there any strategies in there where you said, no, I don't think that's in the right time frame?
I think the small area plans, we would love to have them within 1 to 2 years. But overall, is the PDO rewrite more important to have within 1 to 2 years? And the small area plans,
Yeah.
3 to 5 or something like that?
I mean, there are things like amend zoning to require parking to be located in the rear of the
Right.
buildings in the residential areas. That
That's
doesn't
all,
have, that
that's
doesn't-
all on the PDO.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, so
comprehensive PDO,
if we took all these things and said, these belong in the PDO, you know, maybe a bunch of these will move out.
Well, they
And,
can't be moved out, they have to.
no, I mean, not moved out, but I mean,
Okay.
be
It
dealt
might
with in
help.
one fell swoop. Yeah,
Well, the PDO
consolidated,
maps might
one
help,
consolidated
'cause it's all PDO
implementation.
rewrite,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can all be accomplished in one comprehensive rewrite.
But there are items that you wonder why they're in the 1-2 year, very important. I mean, like they update the village wellhead protection plan. I'm not saying it isn't important,
That's
but,
because we put them there.
no, I,
That's-
I'll tell you why, because Moore County's working on it right now and asked us to help.
right, at a minimum, that should move out
So it's
a,
something that's just going on right now.
or a 3.5 or on here.
Otherwise, it would have probably.
And the tree, you know, enhance the,
Realistically, we could,
They're
I
not
mean, they
gonna have it
could,
done
they could
in
update
a
theirs,
year.
and then when we got around to updating ours, we
That's
just make
true,
sure
Leo.
it's consistent.
We could.
Yeah, I think,
But, and this is, Leo, the time frame is when you start it, not when you finish it. So if you, even if you started it 2 years from now.
yeah,
So if you said Moore County does theirs next year, we
Yeah.
start ours in 2 years, it would fall in this bucket.
Yeah, all I'm saying is strategically, that's probably less important than a lot of other things on this list, and it
Okay.
could move to a later time.
Yeah,
frame.
absolutely, it could.
but even that enhance the tree
that's your
preservation
point,
program,
Yeah.
but if it's part of the PDO, then it goes into the PDO bucket.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, there's so many PDO-related things in this first part.
Oh, yeah.
3 to 5.
Okay, so I'm hearing move wellheads to 3 to 5 years?
That's one.
start with 1.
Well, I
I
thought,
just need one.
Where is that one?
one right now, okay.
It's, new recommendation 7.10, it is 5 from the bottom on the first page.
On the first page?
Uh-huh,
Oh, yeah, on this one.
Oh, yeah. So that goes through to
Kevin, you
5.
need this-
so that goes 3 to 5 years,
Okay.
okay? Anything else in here that you looked at and said it shouldn't be in the 1 to 2 year bucket?
Oh, well, you want all this now? I thought you wanted us to tell you after review.
I think Natalie's working on a deadline to get back to the
Okay.
consultants, and so she's,
This is not,
But
This
this,
is
the
what-
whole intent of today was to talk through these timelines.
okay.
it was, but this is not something that's due back to the consultants.
Um,
They need to know what the strategies are. but
Right.
Prioritization is not a
That's what I was
Okay.
trying to
It's gotta
feel
get
like this is-
inserted in the document in the next 2 weeks.
The important thing is we
They need to
got
know
the
that we buy into
strategies.
these strategies, but not the prioritization.
This matrix has to get filled in the next couple of weeks,
That's
in the
weird.
document for them to turn around to give it back to us.
Oh, in the draft.
Really?
It's in the implementation matrix.
It's in
It
the,
has a
it's
whole-
in the,
This whole thing's in the plan.
it's in the
Yeah.
appendix.
Yeah.
What time do we have the next?
2 o'clock. 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Identify alternative locations for public services to allow for redevelopment of Village Place. That could go into the 3 to 5.
It could.
But it might be started within,
If
So.
the small area plan will also moved.
That's true.
Correct,
that's
so.
when you-
Why would you have to
funny
do
when you
both
move
of
one
them?
thing.
Well, no,
it
this
leads to
says when you
another thing
begin
being
it,
moved.
remember? This
Right.
is you begin it in the next 1 to 2 years. So relocating village services would follow on whatever that plan is, right?
So everything
No, I
related to Village Place,
I think you'd have to
Was-
know you have a viable
Yeah, I
location
know.
before you invest in
I
the
agree,
plan.
I agree with that.
We just invested
Just make it-
$180,000 in this public services. So keep that in mind. Some people will remember.
But the point is that the highest and best use of that real estate.
No, it's not. It never was.
Well, I
When
know.
we put $180,000.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I recommended it in this timeline. Kind of to Judy's point, I went back and tried to correlate as much data as I could. So if you go back to your top vote getters from our residents, let me find that one. So the second top vote getter with 142 votes was reestablish the village core. So the top vote items were traffic and reestablish the village core. So we have in this year's budget money to do the small area plan
For Village Place?
for Village Place, right? And so the whole,
Thinking that's the village core?
no, no, And then the whole arts, culture, creating that vibrant downtown, which is a combination of Village Place and the Village Center. To me, I think what I heard, it was a high priority of our
I
residents.
agree. I'd agree.
So that's why I proposed, and since we've already funded the small area plan, we would do the small area plan in the next 1 to 2 years. Then we would, based on what that said, then maybe evaluate relocating public services. And then, you're still 5 years
Right.
at least away from being able to do anything major.
So maybe create a small area plan needs to be very important. And
Correct.
And the alternative locations for public services is important. You know,
Correct. I have
follows
this one.
the- One follows the other.
So I have that one circled too, as like, I think that's actually very important, not just important. I would agree.
You move one thing, it affects another.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we took all these things and we said, here's the stuff for the PDO, a lot of this will all come up together, and then you don't have that many other discrete,
Yeah, I do think, though, that planning and
You're
zoning,
getting overwhelmed by the number of strategies.
Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, but won't you even though there's a lot of things in PDO changes, you'll probably pick them in waves too, won't you? 1, 2, and 3, or not?
Depends on how we want to do that.
Yeah.
I would, with the amount that are in here, I would propose to do a comprehensive
Yeah, okay,
PDO
so that, you're
rewrite.
right then, it's all one bucket. I thought it might be 2 buckets.
If we
Or
weren't
a baby
changing
bucket.
to an entirely different form of zoning, potentially with character or
Right, I got it,
form-based.
you're right. It's all one bucket then, probably.
but you probably should segregate it that way too, Darren. All the stuff that isn't going to be needed to be form-based, other things that people have just thought of.
That are not form-based,
that
that
are
could just
form-based,
happen.
just make those things
Right.
happen.
Like
yeah.
tree
Yeah,
conservation.
there's-
We could
some
do-
just text
Yeah,
amendment.
Right.
exactly, yeah.
So there might be 2 buckets.
So the
then.
easy,
Yeah.
And that's what I
Buckets.
Well, it depends on,
Look at the buckets now.
oh, many
We're-
more,
we're-
whatever, yeah.
That is the currency of the hour.
the tree preservation, that's not that's not really a form-based thing, that's something we could accomplish.
minimum
with-
square footage
Accomplish with a text.
requirements.
Correct.
You could take that up before a comprehensive.
Or have a
Debate that forever.
evaluation or whatever.
Right. Anything else in the 1 to 2 year bucket? Is the, I noticed something. Judy, you talked about this, 3.2, which identify, you're saying move that to important and move the small area plan to very important, like maybe.
Yeah, I just think one follows the other,
Yep.
right?
Okay. Got
If you
it.
don't do anything with that, then there's no need to move it.
Yep.
The
Alternative
Rattlesnake,
location.
yeah, the Rattlesnake, Village Place corridor is languishes for whatever reason. So is moving public services.
Is what?
So if you don't figure out a Village Place plan, you're not gonna move public services.
Could be in phases.
I wouldn't invest in a village place plan until you knew whether or not you're gonna move public services. That's a high dollar plan.
Yeah, public
Well-
services might be first.
Well,
I think it is.
okay, so it is, that's the way we've got it then. Maybe that's the right
what it
way.
is.
And we're just evaluating, right? Here's it.
Do you guys see any conflicts that you want to share with us?
I had a couple.
Why don't you, because I'd like to hear your input.
So the very first one on the top of the page is likely impacts of significant development proposals. And you have that as the most important, but there are also 2 other.
Which one did you talking about?
2.12?
I'll pull it up. I'm sorry. This one right here, include likely,
I'm so tired.
I know that's hard to read, I'm gonna try to, is that better?
Yeah.
Can you see that one? So include like, this is
Well-
using,
Okay,
community viz.
yeah.
So council gave that a most important for the, and I'm suggesting that if they're turning the model over to us and when we adopt, we should implement it immediately.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that got most important is its impact on stormwater.
I know, you would, that's why I put it
Yeah.
1 to 2.
Yeah.
And
And stormwater.
And it has an impact on stormwater as well.
Correct. I think we should implement that one immediately, which is why I put it 1 to 2. But then when you go down here to, you have 2 more community viz, you have to do it all at the same time. And so we have 2 of them that we said were important, and 1 of them that we said was most important, but all 3 of them really need to go together. So that was a
Okay,
conflict
so
that I
let,
noted.
well, why don't we just combine them? I mean, if there's families of things, let's nest them together. And unless one is a prerequisite for the others.
That's a good idea, yeah. I like that.
We can do that as part of the implementation. Staff can figure that out, I guess.
Yeah.
I'd be
If you're all
concerned
kind of the
about,
same, if you're all on the same time horizon, we can figure out, hey, this is all related, let's do it.
Let's
you
do
know?
it right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
I-
roll.
Yeah.
So my question is that most important to you that we quantify development impacts and we use this model, or is it important to you?
well,
So in terms of priorities, if this was, would you
I think
put
everybody.
other things
so-
above using community events?
Well, I think this is the one public, you know, will want to know about, right? I mean, I think that's the concern of all, you know, what we were just talking about, the language on the, you know, focus area 1. If you have that tool to look at whatever comes before us in the interim, now we've got some fact-based information. And I think that's really what you want to be able to offer the community is,
Fact-based information
Yeah.
as to what the likely impacts
yeah,
would be.
yeah.
it affects so much other stuff.
So
Keep
am
on
I
talking
hearing
about.
am I hearing most important?
But it's,
Factually
Very
based
it's model
assumptions.
information.
Yeah, but we could fix the model. I think we should
Well,
always
and
try to
you'll
fix
better
do,
than nothing.
and you'll do scenarios with
Yeah,
it, you know, so
right.
that's fine, yeah.
So do you want them to be most important or or do you want,
I think people care about the impact of growth on our community. And so I think
I
if
would
this,
argue these
if this,
two should be
if this is a tool,
You would argue what, Natalie?
I think I think I would argue that these two should go up to most important with the other ones. That I think,
Oh, yeah, because they're
based on
tied
what we
together.
heard
Yeah.
from the community, the impact of growth is what's changing the character. And so I think it's probably most important that we understand what that is, but I don't know. You could make an
Yeah, I mean, I
argument.
think that we understand what the community's concerns are, and this is a way to help us to actually look at the impact, but it doesn't prevent us from thinking about proposed development with the community's concerns in mind. Does that make sense?
so you're thinking,
It
two,
refines our methods, but it
Exactly.
doesn't prevent us from taking the community's concerns to heart.
well, that's what we want you to
So you
do.
think you could say it very important? Is that what you're saying?
No, so two,
I'm just saying that if you look at this from the standpoint of not overloading staff, it may or may not be important.
what does that mean?
It means
Making the
we've got a lot to do.
Yeah, if we
Not
have to,
everything
yeah,
is truly,
Most
trying to cut you a break. Do
Right.
you understand that? He's trying to cut you a
But
break.
unless this is a tool that
to help,
facilitates
it's
the
gonna
work.
help, yeah.
I know, but we could always move it, but you're right. You're trying to take some things off the plate.
He's making an argument
Yeah.
that instead of moving these to most important,
Make it all
you move
important.
this one to important.
Support it and put them together.
So how does the rest of council feel
Put
about
them
it?
together. No, not put them
no.
together.
I mean, I think
Don't want them
there's,
together.
I don't think that requires those other ones.
And we could
saying
implement them
staff
together,
can make,
Judy, even though they're listed separate.
Qualitative comments without the data.
Then,
Okay.
thank you very much. What is that?
Okay.
Well,
The
staff,
int-
That's opinion then.
okay. You know what those, you know what you're getting out of that model? It's something that's coming out of somebody's assumptions, it's opinion. It's just better opinion.
It's better opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so leave it the
Yeah,
same.
6
I think that's what I just
Okay.
heard. Did I hear you correctly?
That's my,
Leave it the same, the way it is now?
I heard you taking things off their plate immediately, so I'm for that.
Okay.
Okay, so here's one that can move to 3 years. It will not be popular, but
yeah.
4.7, implement the recommendations set forth in the comprehensive pedestrian and the comprehensive bicycle plans. I mean, just given everything that's out there, this seems.
And what number, Judy?
4.7.
Yeah.
So it's 1 to 2 years important. I'm saying push it out 3 to 5. Because of also the big dollar.
Well,
It's a big dollar deal.
I guess
If you-
my concern is we kept Tom's committee at bay for 2 years. We stopped him from doing anything. because we we told him to wait on the comprehensive plan. And now with the comprehensive plan done, we're gonna tell him to wait 2 more years. I'm not sure if that is the way I wanna do business, but, you know what I'm saying?
Bait and switch.
I would agree with you if we didn't stop Tom for 2 years. We just told him, don't do anything,
Well,
wait.
he's going on the planning board, he'll get over it.
You know, I met his committee, let's don't get
Plenty
to
to
Tom. At the bicycle committee, we basically said quit meeting.
I know,
2 years.
I know.
We've talked internally about like who manages that? What person on staff manages bike ped?
Parks and Rec.
Should it be
No?
That mo-
streets and grounds,
Probably should
transportation?
be.
Should it
It's a
be planning?
great
Should
discussion.
it be?
What a great
I mean,
discussion.
Yeah, Mark,
That's
and
Mark Wagner.
but from a greenways are different than
Sidewalk.
sidewalks and right-of-ways along streets and on major roads.
And it could
It's
be
not a recreation.
interdisciplinary, it could be both together.
Move it over to
It has to be-
Apke?
It could be
So I don't,
interdisciplinary.
Maybe it
base,
is, I don't know.
we're not sure.
Great discussion.
Okay.
Great
I
thought.
mean, some planning departments handle it.
No, not planning. I'm
No,
not
no.
giving Darren any more.
Well, if planning
I mean, they have
department,
He's
transportation,
got plenty.
if
they have
planning department,
they have
Got job
transportation,
security over there.
they have transportation planners in the planning department and the transportation
I
planners.
get you. Okay.
They
They
may
do.
do.
Less important or move it out?
Move it out 3 to 5 years, because it's important. But I mean, if you, again, I'm just trying to parse all this
I'm
stuff
okay
and
with
look at it.
losing, you guys are
This is-
against it, but
this
I'm
is-
for being sooner.
This is a very long-term, implementation of that, these plans is very long-term.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think it's okay to say start it in the next 2 years, recognizing there's probably gonna
Be the
take
end of the
duration of
second
this
year.
plan, you know.
But that means it stays where it is.
That's right, yeah.
I think it was a high priority for
It- it-
residents.
Well, it is. It's
I think-
126.
Yeah.
I'd be concerned that this isn't soon enough.
Okay.
And the 2 years is.
Take it
over.
ongoing.
I had a
I'm trying to say
I had a
that,
proposal to
that is
everyone.
me moving it back and already, and I don't want to see it moved again.
So Natalie, a question. We just recently sent out the annual survey. Now, will the annual survey ask some of the questions that are relevant to us making a decision on what to move up or back in the priority list?
Probably not.
We did not change the questions, however, I think it would
There
be,
are some in there, I mean, you can look at historical.
yes,
Yeah.
they could
Most things
influence.
don't change much over time.
It's usually satisfaction with services.
But sidewalks is one that we've had the lowest satisfaction with of all of our services, so
Okay.
that would be another argument for leaving it where it is.
So there isn't any worry about that be in conflict with what the comprehensive plan may
You
state?
mean making it a priority?
Correct.
No.
I don't think no, that would not.
Okay,
I
thank
wouldn't
you.
anticipate it to be no.
When do you get results of that?
Next
Another month?
Month or so?
Yeah.
I had one in the very last one in this 1 to 2 year time frame, installing electric car charging stations. I went back and said that could wait.
No, I don't think I can.
You don't think you
Well,
can?
More and
whether
more
you own an electric
Teslas are out
I
there.
don't mind it waiting, I thought it was more an opportunity. I thought we were looking for partnership opportunities.
Yeah.
So if that partnership opportunity occurred sooner, we could still take advantage of it.
Well, and Jeff told us in a meeting when we.
Are they utilized?
Yes,
Yes,
they're
they're-
hogged up.
Yeah,
They're-
that's, we're having a
yes.
problem. And plus, they don't have the best
The best
technology.
technology. So you,
It's old technology and they are utilized heavily.
People are parking in there all day rather than just
Well, I
charging
have
period.
I've seen that. I never can park there, but I don't want to park there, but yeah, there are cars.
So you shouldn't park there unless you're
and then,
electric
and
car.
the units need to be upgraded, so you've got that in the budget.
Correct. Okay, so leave it.
No, we don't. We don't agree with units.
No, we don't.
No,
Jeff
we
talked
were looking
about
for
they need to
partners.
be.
We're looking for
The
partners.
point is to make that a public-private partnership.
Okay,
Made a
Provide
private.
access in our public spaces for.
Start charging, right?
For-profit organization to come and run those electric charging stations.
okay, well, I think I would start on that.
Yeah, right now it's free,
It's
free
the one that-
electricity.
Yeah.
I
Does
think I
the,
know you leave it. Okay,
does the resort have charging stations now
they do.
We do in the valet lot.
in the
In the
valet?
valet
lot?
lot?
So they lock
Find
down.
out who they're using and use.
If you come in with
That's
electric car,
strategic
put
partnerships.
Electric golf cart?
No, the electric
Chevy
vehicle
Volt.
cars.
Teslas and whatnot,
Yes,
Okay,
Volts.
Chevy Volt from
Guarantee you,
Tesla.
they rotate them.
Well,
Yeah.
I almost bought a Volt, but my clubs wouldn't fit in the back, so.
Put on the roof.
Okay,
What about the
next.
3
Yeah.
to 5 year period?
On that, yeah, I'm okay with that, as long as we take advantage of partnerships that happened prior to them.
No, you didn't move that one to 3 to 5,
No,
did you?
no, we're leaving that at 1 to 2 is what I
Okay,
heard
I'm
you
sorry.
say.
Okay.
I am trying to direct council to the next page,
3
or
to
the
5.
next set
Sorry.
of timeframes, which is 3 to 5 years. Right here.
Okay.
Knowing that they could start in 5 years.
Yeah,
So
so
I-
you could start in year 3, 4, or 5 of the 5-year plan.
So I question the dollar signs for 7.3, the West Contrast Park. You can do that for under 200,000?
I think it's in the current SOP for under 200,000.
Okay, fine.
The master plan.
The master plan for West
Yeah.
Contrast Park.
Well, is that, you agree with that legitimacy?
I'll double check it, but I'm fairly certain
I
in
hear
the
you on
current
that.
SOP it's
I
less
think
than
it's
that.
close, but it might
I wanted
be
to say
just
it was
over.
140, but I can't remember, and please don't
Is
quote me.
that currently in the plan for more
It
than
is
3
in
years
the
from now?
5-year plan.
Yeah,
For more than 3 years from now?
It is, I think it's in year 3,
you'd think it should be moved up,
I think, but I'll go back and double check.
but if we're trying
I'll double
to
check.
purposely not move things up, we have to make tough
I
choices.
do recall that we moved it up from where it was with an eye toward trying to set ourselves up to potentially take advantage of some public partners.
That's
public-private
inconsistent.
partnerships.
Yeah, that timeframe's inconsistent with what we talked about in the strategic planning session in December. I thought we talked about moving it
I'll
up.
go back and double check to be sure.
Yeah,
So I would love to move up 3.14
Okay, 3.14, high-speed internet,
to
okay,
at least very important.
okay.
you know,
Council okay with high-speed internet being very important? It got a lot of votes.
you know what's interesting, ironic, you'll see a lot of high-speed internet discussions consistent with library discussions. Isn't that interesting? Today we're speaking with the library.
Yeah.
You'll see it, like, half the time, you'll see a library discussion spilled in with a high-speed internet discussion. You don't see them together, what doesn't belong together, but they, anyway, sorry.
If you move it up to most important, does it have to be done within 1 to 2 years?
No, we're in 3 to 5 years.
No, she's just saying it's very important as
Very important.
And I would agree, because nothing in the very important, you've got 95 votes, 207.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest vote
It's
getters.
a huge vote getter, that council. And you've got the same issue with the Western Connector right below it.
Yeah, and I agree with that, moving it up from that.
Okay,
because-
so we'll move that to very
Because
important.
high-populated cities, market conditions will generate high-speed, we're gonna have to drive it.
Well, plus we're getting people that come here from bigger places. And, it'd be just cool if they could go, hey,
Well, it works in the working from home.
yes,
It'll
exactly.
work for the hospital.
Yeah, the hospital.
Okay, what about Western Connector? This was another one that got a lot of resident votes that was important.
Yeah, what's the number?
122 votes.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the 4.5.
I'm fine for 5+ years.
The little type's getting me.
Bottom of the page.
It can be very important for 5+ years.
So Judy's making
Maybe
a suggestion to move it to 5+ years.
And to make it more important.
To make it
It might,
very important. It might actually. It was the 7th top vote getter in all the strategies.
To build it, or?
gotta protect and
Preserve
support
the
its build.
corridor.
Or explore options.
To preserve the corridor.
I've already, I had it at most important, and because I lost that, got it down to important. But 3 of 5, I don't see, 3 of 5 important. Obviously, if it would, I don't know, I think it should be very important, 3 to 5, so.
I think this will depend upon when we have some confidence as to where the corridors might be.
Yeah.
I don't know when that'll be.
Say, Jeff?
And I've made this point before, but I don't think there's necessarily a correlation between importance and appropriate timeline.
Right.
project has an appropriate timeline and it has an importance.
Yeah.
I think if we had a good confidence level, if we had a good confidence
But if
level,
it's less important, you can live with
Right.
a later timeline, even though.
Right.
So then it is related. You just
It
conflicted
can be,
yourself.
It can be, but it's not necessarily, you know?
well, if in fact there was some declaration by NCDOT as to a corridor that they were contemplating, maybe even in the 20-year timeframe, then this clearly would be implementable.
I think that if you had this as a project or a task, it would drive the discussion with DOT
To get
DOT
it,
to
to get
start
it
Call him back and say, I think you
That
should.
might work.
I also
Check
think,
your
This is not, we wouldn't be the only municipality involved in this, of course.
my reasoning
Everything.
in wanting it at that
Thoughts, sir?
timeframe is I feel like the US Open in 2024 could have an impact on this discussion.
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I disagree with that for
DOT is not
sure.
gonna do anything,
I'm not saying they're gonna do anything
no.
We'd like-
saying
Don't yell.
So
I'm
there-
a fragile state.
by that. I'm not saying they're gonna do anything by then. I'm saying,
This isn't building anything.
Wait a minute, this might
they're
be
not, no,
recorded.
they're not building anything, but I think it's gonna start, they're gonna, I don't know, I just feel like,
I don't think it has any bearing on
I don't know,
2020.
No,
I think that.
2040.
Maybe, maybe.
Eventually, and then
It's
you'll-
likely that with our Division H staff, the Open is going to create near-term capacity on their hand to wrestle with this question.
that's what I'm saying.
Because they're not building roads.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying
We
anything's
don't
gonna
want to have a
happen.
road that's being in progress during.
I think 2025, there's gonna be some serious
Okay,
discussion on
can
it.
I
Oh,
get
yeah.
council to agree to, I think, leave it in the 3 to 5 and maybe call it very important? I think that's what I'm
Good by
hearing.
me.
And one vote for move up, but.
I like
others
that, thank you.
stay.
I feel good, that's where my original thought was
Okay.
before. As you know, a camel is a horse designed by committee, right?
Anything else in this 3 to 5 year time frame that council members may have had a comment on?
Again, I think if we nest all the PDO stuff, things like that,
Okay.
or this moves out.
You guys have any thoughts for us?
I had one other one, 6.6 received a lot of resident votes and council had it as important. So this was 90, this one got 91 votes to create new open spaces.
Tell me, which one was this?
6.6, page 4 of 8.
6.6 on page 4 of 8, fifth from the bottom.
Yep, okay.
This one right here.
Okay. Well, that's the one we combined.
Yeah, I
So
would-
this is one you might want to consider making more important than important.
I still feel like we have the resources to work with centralized recreation areas. And that's the strategy to get me that community center, to get to West Pine Park.
That was a financial strategy from long ago, and the public has changed their mind.
Or they've added the ability to have neighborhood parks to the agenda. I think
Because
that's,
centralized parks are more financially easier.
But we haven't even built the second financial park, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
The financial park, the
Not
recreation
park,
park. I just feel like, you know, if you want to, I would move it out to 5+ years rather than raise its importance. Because I just think that,
I would like to move it to more passive greens. I think what they really want is passive green space. I
But
don't
what
think
is
they want
that?
Parks. And I
Oh.
think,
Yeah, and I think this.
I think the
this-
issue,
yeah.
I think
I
the
think
issue of,
it's the key
the issue of neighborhood parks has come up several times.
it's come
I
up
don't know what
several
the priority
times,
is.
but I don't know what it means.
And I don't think that our Parks and Recreation Department wants to be doing both those things at the same time.
and I don't think we have the capacity to do it.
I'd agree with you.
And so
I
I
agree with
think,
that, I just don't
Add
agree.
this one to 5?
I don't want to bite off more than we can chew.
I don't agree ignoring the public, that they're saying they want more than just centralized parks. They do want that, but we maybe have to move that off into the future because we can't.
Okay.
But, John, you know, you heard it a lot, what do you think?
Neighborhood parks is something that's come up a couple of
Come up a
times in
lot.
number 6.
I mean, I think it's a,
Village, even,
Public's
even
demanding
for,
it.
even for Village Acres to come over.
And
do the
again,
park in that
everything
neighborhood.
that comes up doesn't mean that we have to have a
Right.
plan for it.
if it's in the plan, we've
But
listed.
it doesn't have to be tomorrow.
It doesn't have to be
That's
tomorrow.
So if you're okay with that, that's what I'm asking.
So what if we said, you've got right below that one there, in 7.1 is update the Parks and Rec master plan. So what if in 3 to 5 years, we update the master plan and then that can identify where some of these neighborhood places may go?
And that begins in 5+ years.
Yeah, and then we'll move, I think what I hear you saying, move 6.6 to 5+ years.
Here's a question. Theoretically, if you think about this notion of building
Neighborhood.
neighborhood-centered parks or passive
Yeah.
open spaces, whatever you want to call it. While we may not want to undertake the effort and cost of actually developing those parks in the near term, might we want to set this prioritization up such that as opportunities become available to acquire properties in the near term, we can do that? Do we want to do that?
Well, certainly, we had that prerogative at any time for any reason.
Yeah, I'd like you to have
But
that prerogative.
I mean, I'd say, I'd rather put a walking track around the harness track before I do
Right.
neighborhood parks. I just think it's one of those things that sounds wonderful and peaceful, but I'm worried about the utility of it, how many people would really use it and go there, and the upkeep of it.
I agree with all your questions, Judy. I just don't, I want to listen to the public and they say they're interested. I agree that we don't know how to implement it.
Yeah.
We don't know how to execute it. I would say it doesn't fit nicely and maintained by the municipality. It might be belong but to the neighborhood and the neighborhood's responsibility.
Well, I would probably
won't
say
happen.
that the neighborhood homeowners association, if there's a
Right.
park going in, they would welcome the opportunity to provide maintenance of that neighborhood park. Doesn't have to be jungle gyms and slides and everything.
Right.
It could be nature walkways and everything. And that they would be.
So there's nothing to prevent that on a private basis right now.
No, we probably would have to be partnered and to facilitate to get it done, in my opinion. But I still say I agree with you, Judy. I think it's not defined, and that's what you're saying. I think even John's saying that. We're still trying to define it, so it should be moved out.
So we've got in the plan
I
that
don't think anything
we
we're saying is inconsistent.
would kind of get to the bottom of that matter.
Yeah,
when
we
update-
haven't got to the bottom.
Yeah, when we update the Parks and Recreation
Yeah.
Master Plan.
Yeah.
So that's the way. I think
Good point.
we
I
kind
guess I
of
kinda-
Does that make sense? Because I
get to
think
the bottom of
everything's
it.
very
We need
similar.
to study it further, understand.
That has to be done first.
Yes, we have to do
I
that first.
agree with Jeff, who knows, it may be a pop-up thing within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, or whatever. If it's an opportunity for land purchase, that should be something, and partnering with neighborhoods, although in the latest version of number 6, for that piece of property that the county wanted, at this point, they didn't want to take on debt of having to go in and acquire, get out a loan, and then, so there's things like, there's some real issues of financing, of how they would provide it, but there's clearly was certainly a need, by the current, at least the current homeowners association, the residents, to do that.
And there's discussion in the Lake District, so
Yeah,
you don't
it's
want
all-
to.
Well, no, I agree with, I think it's opportunity-driven to extent, and I use the example of the St. Andrews Pool. I think that was a great opportunity had we had the vision
Right.
to say, let's acquire this area and just, make it grass and a couple pathways and a
That
couple
wasn't the
benches.
offer.
Pardon me?
That wasn't the offer. The offer was you buy it for a pool for $1 or we keep it.
But ultimately, they
Yeah,
sold
but
it.
ultimately, they sold all 3 parcels and put 3 up houses.
Yeah, yeah.
And we
And
could
we
have,
could have bought it.
And we could have bought it. There's a
Yeah, we
price
could have
for
bought
it,
it at
sure, of
market
course we
price,
could.
not at $1, but.
Yeah, not at
If it's
$1,
not
but we
written
could have
down,
bought it
you
at
can't
market.
execute it, so I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's opportunity-driven.
Yeah, I think it is, very much.
Is everything in the 5+ years column, look appropriate for the 5+ year time frame to you? There's only 4.
There's only 4 items, right?
I think that,
Well, you gotta,
What are those people gonna do in 5 years?
yeah, the council won't have anything to do.
We're gonna move spaces to the 5-year
Well, they
window.
just dial in
We
again.
just agreed to do that, so we just added 5.
I'm not sure I agree with 2-1 because of, we've already said we're gonna move towards character-based quickly. It seems really, might be too late. It
I
might
wrote
be
a
too
question-
late.
I have 3-5 with a question mark.
That might be too late to stop.
Yeah, I mean, maybe,
Development.
you're right, Natalie, maybe that should be 3, 5.
I think it should be
Yeah.
3 to 5.
That makes more
So I
sense.
think that's not correct.
Good call.
At that point, you're just implementing, it's
Right,
considered.
once you've got
Yeah,
the,
all the hard work.
zoning.
Yeah,
It's
the
done.
consider is done before
Yeah.
that, you'll be
Yep.
implementing by
But
then.
one of the recommendations from Leo's Planning and Zoning is we have a glossary.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that's, so this character-based planning and conservation neighborhoods, it's really important that we have a really good definition
We got a
Yeah,
break
you
in the
start
glossary, because we keep talking about it. So when the residents read it, they can look
They've
at the
got a
back and
reference,
find out
yeah.
and have a real crisp, clear definition of what the heck we're talking about.
I agree with the others, though.
Okay,
Yeah. I don't know what you guys, but.
in 5 minutes, we need to reconfigure for the next interview that you have.
Do you have any pillows and blankets for us?
Pillows and monkeys.
Nap time?
All right, so
You're gonna,
I will make the changes that we've discussed so far. We didn't get all the way through ongoing. I will try to add a level of effort on there. And I think that
The final discussion is the calendar, right, the schedule?
the final discussion is the calendar, yes.
And somewhere we just added more work for Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to make another attempt to argue that this is not a really pressing issue.
It's not fun.
It's not, because,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to provide our consultants with something in a couple of.
Yeah, we could move it up any time frame we
We
want.
can change it all the way until October,
Until the final
November.
draft, 'cause
Yeah.
nothing else in that document depends on this.
Right.
Correct.
right?
In fact, one of the
We need to
tasks,
clear all this until,
Yep.
It does help in writing the document to have some loose confederation, though, I bet.
well, I think, thematically,
Yeah.
there are a few bold ideas, and there's a few principles in here that we want to, convey with and lead with, yeah. And so I think,
I'm with you.
I think
the
this is.
whole ideas are.
Really proud of where we went.
No, I know, but
Really
all
proud
of
of
this
where
is
we're
just
going.
in creating the underpinnings of that, really.
So council support for a glossary for P and Z
Yes,
suggestions?
Yes,
absolutely,
yes.
yes.
Not having this set in stone isn't gonna cause any problems for our consultants.
No, as long
Right.
as we think the other overarching ideas
So,
are.
and by the same token, with the
Timeline.
potential timeline, with Natalie in particular, it's not going to impact that either.
Right.
Okay.
not right now.
Can I ask a quick question? Just for my own clarification, what was the reason that council removed the lots along the north side of Monticello, between Monticello and the track from the,
Because the public
The
said to.
public.
Because it said to listen to the public.
Yeah, we had overwhelmingly,
Keep it open
overwhelmingly
space.
bad reaction to that at the open house.
primarily people in the Monticello area?
No, everyone. They didn't want us taking village-owned property for development, and they also didn't like the fact that this property in particular was bordered village recreation facilities.
I think it was
The
more
village,
love.
the village owned that property?
Yes.
Yeah, love of track, I think was the.
All right.
Love of track. Okay, on that note,
So-
love of track.
Our
Natalie?
consultant is able to deliver the revised drafts September 9th or 10th with a joint P and Z council work session. So are there any
Yes, no, that's
council
good.
members who have a conflict on September 9th or 10th?
No. I'm leaving the 11th.
We gotta get life.
What's
I'm
the
leaving the
time?
11th
Is
too.
it an all-day affair? What is
No.
it? What time?
10 years.
Make it Tuesday.
What time? Because I have some, I have an obligation with my kid's school,
Which day?
September 9th.
Okay, so you need it to be the 10th.
Will you be back on the 10th?
Yeah, what day, time is
It's
it?
a Monday and a Tuesday. It could be whatever time.
Tuesday's
Only a couple hours?
Tuesday's a council meeting.
Tuesday's
It's going to
council.
be, as I explained in the memo, like Jeff, when he presents the budget, it will be a presentation of the document.
Here it is.
So my suggestion, because I do think it's important, as I mentioned in the memo,
Separate
that the
meeting.
public have an opportunity to digest and the council.
Council meeting?
Mm-hmm. So I'm leaving
That's
that
the next
Do
council.
that meeting,
You
right?
want to just do it at that meeting?
Yeah.
At the beginning, just have
Will
it
you
be
be there?
joint?
What else are we going to have in that meeting? That could be incredibly long. I mean, unless you do it right in the first, as the first item.
Yeah, that's what she's thinking.
Yeah, I would have the presentation first.
Incredibly long meeting.
But you, yeah, people come and they sit there
Okay,
forever.
September 10th.
Is very
Okay.
light agenda,
Yeah,
I think.
I
But what do
it's
you- what
too-
I don't
were
want to
saying?
screw anything up. I could probably make the 9th work. I just have to hire a babysitter. It's a
Well-
child.
Let's do
It's-
the 10th.
So when are you putting the document out to the
We'll
public?
just,
So
we'll
they
just
will
do it at our
deliver
regular
it
meeting
that
on the
day.
10th.
So everybody hears it for the first time?
Everyone will hear it for the first time on the 10th. Then my suggestion is, we will upload it to envisionthevillage.com. Depending on, maybe between now and then, we might come up with a few online survey questions, some discussion forums around some of the key issues or things that are in there, but we would post that for at least 2 weeks. And then P&Z would look to hold, Leo mentioned the week of, I think it was September 27th. So it would be available for about 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks before the P&Z hearing, and then a solid month before the council hearing. So it'd be plenty of time.
And you want comments back on this by Thursday?
And I would like comments back on the draft text by Thursday.
Okay, perfect.
Changing out that box for a new box.
We'll do it tomorrow.
Okay, are we ready to
Thank you very
adjourn this
much.
meeting?
For putting cats there.
We'll reconvene in 15 minutes to enter back into our library interviews.
Thank you so much.
We get a little comfort break? We get a little comfort break?
We get pepper break.
Thank you for the opportunity,
Yes,
folks.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work, Leo.
Thanks for the lunch, bro.
Or no?